What if the Power 9 were in Yugioh? Errated. The Power 9, as the name would suggest, were 9 of the most powerful cards ever printed, and today I'll be converting them into Yugioh. Again, starting things off is Black Lotus, a 0-cost artifact with the effect tap, sacrifice Black Lotus, add 3 mana of any one color. Tapping this card can be played as an interrupt. Interrupts are a retired spell type, basically a faster than normal instant spell that can only be responded to by other interrupts. If we were to use Yu-Gi-Oh terms to compare them, then there are 4 different levels of priority: Spell Speed 1 or sorcery spells, or actions done only when it's the player's turn. Spell Speed 2 are instant spells and tap abilities that can be activated regardless of player turn. Spell Speed 3 are what interrupts used to be, spells that can only be responded to by other interrupts. And the community term Spell Speed 4 are split seconds, spells and abilities that must be resolved before other spells and abilities can be activated, so long as they are not mana abilities, abilities that produce mana somewhere in their effect. Converting this card into Yu-Gi-Oh, I would make it a continuous spell card with the effect: when you control no other cards, you contribute Black Lotus, declare 1 monster type and attribute. Quick effect: special summon 3 level 1 Black Lotus tokens with 0 attack and defense with that type and attribute, and then declare 1 monster card type: Fusion, Synchro, Xyz, or Link. You cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck other than the declared type. The turn you activate this card, they cannot be tributed for a tribute summon. When Black Lotus is sent to the graveyard, you can quick effect banish this card. Fusion summon 1 fusion monster from your extra deck using monsters from your hand or field as fusion material. Target any number of level 1 tokens on your side of the field. Target monsters are treated as a tuner monster while it's face up on the field. Tribute 3 level 1 tokens. Special summon 3 level 3 or lower monsters with the same name from your deck, but their effects are negated until the start of your next turn and cannot be used as material except for an Xyz summon. This card can be used to ritual summon any ritual monster from your deck or hand. You must also tribute monsters from your hand or field whose total levels equal or exceed the level of the ritual monster, whose total levels equal or exceed the level of that ritual monster. You can only activate the effect of Black Lotus once per turn. Before we go any further, it's important to discuss all the different types of monsters I just said. Fusion monsters are cards that are summoned from a sideboard of cards called the extra deck with the use of a fusion card, and as long as the monsters used as material meet the fusion monsters requirements listed on the card. Synchro monsters are monsters that can be summoned from the extra deck with a tuner and 1 or more non-tuner monsters, as long as their combined level meets the synchro monster's level, and that they meet the requirements listed on the synchro monster they're trying to summon. Xyz monsters require a set amount of monsters, usually 2, with the same level on the field in order to be summoned, ranking on top of the materials used, with the cards underneath becoming its overlay units. Cards attached to an Xyz monster to be later detached in order to activate their effects. Links just need the specified monsters on the field and be placed in either extra monster zone in the center 2nd or 4th columns, or a monster zone on your side of the field that a link monster directly points to. Finally, ritual monsters are main deck cards that must be summoned with a designated ritual spell that usually require 1 or more monsters with combined levels that equal or exceed the ritual monster you're trying to summon, all while requiring the said ritual monster in your hand in order to summon it. Black Lotus becomes a continuous spell, as artifacts are non-monster cards that stay on the field with activated abilities, though I made it summon tokens at quick effect speed, as an interrupt is basically a higher priority instant spell, and while faster than normal quick play spell would be a counter trap, it wouldn't make sense to have that level of priority since you're not responding to any action in particular. You can only activate Black Lotus when you control no other cards, since I basically made the ultimate generic starter / extender, so we need a big restriction in order to balance it. I made it a when effect so it can miss timing, as if an effect starts with when and has the words "you can," the effect becomes an optional effect. In order to resolve, that effect must be the last thing that happens. If a card activates its effect when it's sent to the graveyard, as a cost to play another card, the last thing to resolve is the new card being played, since the when effect card was first sent to the graveyard and then the new card resolves, meaning Black Lotus must be the last mechanic or effect to happen in order to resolve. It summons 3 level 1 tokens to mimic the 3 mana you would get from Black Lotus. It has the effect to fusion summon a monster, since the tokens on their own are not very useful for fusion summoning monsters. However, it's at quick effect speed, since all fusion monsters have archetypal fusion cards, with additional effects to summon their fusion monsters. Since you're inherently losing 3 cards in order to summon 1, it has the effect to change any number of level 1 tokens into tuners, since you usually don't want your board to be full of tuner monsters, as you must use 1 tuner monster and 1 or more non-tuner monsters in order to summon a synchro monster, giving you the option to summon multiple different synchro monsters, or to synchro climb using your multiple tuners. It has the effect to summon 3 level 3 or lower monsters, since you can't exceed summon using tokens, as to become overlay units, they must first leave the field in order to do so. This is a problem since tokens stop existing when they leave the field. The effects of the monsters are negated, as you would gain way too much advantage from the 3 monsters being summoned directly from the deck, on top of only being able to exceed summon with them, since link monsters in particular would abuse this effect, as the only thing preventing them from dominating any more than they already have is the fact that they usually need non-token monsters or effect monsters in order to be summoned. However, the monsters all have to have the same name to force you to run 3 copies of the card you want to summon in your deck, breaking your hand if you drew them, and requires you to expend all copies. Its last effect lets you ritual summon any ritual monster, because the tokens Black Lotus summons don't really help you ritual summon, as many of the cards you want to ritual summon have levels beyond 3. The next card up is Time Walk, a 2-cost sorcery spell with 1 blue and 1 generic, with the effect, take another turn after this one. Converting this card into Yugioh, I would make it a continuous spell card, with the effect, during your 3rd end phase. After this card's activation, banish this card and then skip your opponent's next turn. During your turn, when this card leaves the field, it becomes the end phase of this turn. Time Walk becomes a continuous spell to provide your opponent some counterplay, as it gets progressively harder to protect Time Walk with every passing turn, allowing your opponent to draw the out, since getting an extra turn is a tremendous effect with Yu-Gi-Oh's lack of a traditional cost system. With the cards that do let you get an extra turn, all have massive requirements in order to do so. It's also the reason why I added the detriment of ending your turn if Time Walk is removed. The next card up is Ancestral Recall, a 1 blue cost instant spell, with the effect, draw 3 cards or force your opponent to draw 3 cards. Converting this card into Yu-Gi-Oh, it may become a quick play spell card, with the effect, if your opponent draws 3 or more cards this turn, except during the draw phase, draw 3 cards, or your opponent draws 3 cards. You can only activate the effect of Ancestral Recall once per turn. I gave Ancestral Recall the effect of drawing cards only after your opponent draws cards, because this card revolves around letting either player draw cards, and because drawing cards is a very powerful effect, as there is an entire series of cards that lets you draw 2 cards at drastic costs, like banishing the top 10 cards of your deck face down, shuffling 5 monsters back into your deck, or shuffling 3 monsters with different types in your graveyard back into your deck at the start of the first main phase, and skipping your battle phase this turn. So you need to do something very hard or detrimental in order to resolve an effect like this. This requirement may not seem like much, but a majority of decks don't draw outside the draw step, instead adding cards into their hand. The only time a player would draw 3 or more cards in a turn would be if they had a certain level 2 insect / level 4 winged beast in their hand, or if you're intentionally making them draw cards. The next card to be converted is Time Twister, a 3-cost sorcery spell with 1 blue and 2 generic. With the effect, each player shuffles their hand and graveyard into their library, then draw 7 cards, then put Time Twister into its owner's graveyard. Converting this card, I would make it a normal spell card. With the effect, if you have no cards in your graveyard, each player shuffles all cards from their hand and graveyard into the deck, then draws 5 cards. I add the restriction of requiring you to have an empty graveyard in order to activate Time Twister, since it doesn't affect the field, meaning you could go full combo and then refill on the same turn. Forcing you to not have a graveyard severely limits what you can do in a turn, as many actions result in sending a card into your graveyard unless you have cards that prevent them from hitting the graveyard, like the continuous spell card Dimensional Fissure, banishing all monsters that would be sent into the graveyard, limiting Time Twister into a going second card. The last cards we will be converting are the Moxens, namely Moxen Sapphire, Emerald, Ruby, Pearl, and Jet, each being 0-cost artifacts. With the effect, tap, add 1 colored mana to your mana pool. The colored mana pertaining to the Moxen used. Sapphire adds blue mana, Emerald adds green, Ruby red, Pearl white, and Jet black. Converting these cards into Yugioh, they may become a normal trap card. With the effect, activate this card by declaring 1 monster type. Special summon this card in defense position as a level 1 effect monster with 0 attack and 0 defense. Its attribute is dictated by the Moxen's color. Jet is dark, Pearl is light, Sapphire is water, Ruby is fire, and Emerald is earth. Each Moxen also has a summoning restriction. Jet can only be used for Xyz summons. With the effect, declare a level from 1 to 3. Mox Jet becomes the declared level until the end of the turn. Pearl can only be used for synchros and becomes a tuner. Sapphire can only be used for links. Ruby can only be used for fusions. With the added effect, this card can be used as a substitute for any 1 fusion material whose name is mentioned on the fusion monster card, but the other materials must be correct. And the quick effect, fusion summon 1 fusion monster from your extra deck using monsters from your hand or field as fusion materials, including this card and Emerald. If you ritual summon exactly 1 ritual monster with a card effect that requires the use of monsters, this card can be used as the entire requirement. This card can be used to ritual summon any ritual monster from your deck or hand. You must also attribute monsters from your hand or field whose total levels equal or exceed the level of the ritual monster, whose total levels equal or exceed the level of that ritual monster. This card is not treated as a trap. If you have no spell or trap cards in your graveyard, you can activate this card the turn it was set, and all with a hard once per turn. A trap card, for those of you who don't know, is a card that can be activated on either player's turn as long as it was set on the field for at least 1 turn, unless stated otherwise. They're also not treated as trap cards while they are monsters, to prevent them from being destroyed from spell and trap card removal. They all become trap cards solely for the purpose of allowing Xyz summoning, and because they are all activatable at interrupt speed. Jet has the additional effect of modulating its own level, as there are very few rank 1 Xyz monsters. Ruby is a fusion spell that can be used as a substitute for any named fusion material because of the aforementioned additional cost of fusion summoning. And Emerald essentially becomes a ritual raven for any attribute, as a single level 1 monster isn't gonna do much to help a ritual summon. If there's anything I should have changed, or any ideas on cards I should convert next, please let me know in the comments below, or let me know on my Discord and Patreon, links in the description. And if you like this video, you should check out this one, where I converted Yugioh into Magic the Gathering.
I can't really think of anything to fix the card in his little thought experiment. More of a case to describe that some cards are just kind of broken,